Guys, that is probably the most embarrassing start to a live stream I've ever done. I've been talking for 20 minutes and my wife just phoned me and said, "Did you know you're not live?" Yeah. Well, I'm live now. Good morning, everybody. 20 minutes late. I've actually been talking to a screen for 20 minutes without anybody on the other end. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? That's what happens when you do morning shows, because it's way too early in the morning. I was wondering how there were so many people, in the comments. Good morning, everybody. I am here, and I've been here for ages talking and not realizing that nobody was listening. So thanks to my wife, who had the sense to phone me. I couldn't understand why people were saying in the comments that I thought they were talking about Where Are the Men of England. Do you know what? You're all extremely polite, and that's extremely embarrassing. I hit the start stream button, but obviously I missed it. Didn't have my glasses on. Morning, everybody. Anyway, let's start again, will we? Well, at least I've had a practice run. That never happens on GMTV, does it? You know what I need, guys? I need a production team. It's as simple as that. I need a production team. I'm just gonna have to do this all again, aren't I? Right. Listen, what I want to do this morning, what I've already done this morning, and literally talking to myself. What I've done this morning is we started the morning as we always do. Let's start the morning with some good news. Let's start the morning with some Bible verses, okay? So, okay. That's really knocked me for six. It's not often I'm left speechless, but when I realize I've been talking to myself for 20 minutes and hadn't noticed, that's what happens when you go on a rant and you're not looking at the comments. Do you know what I mean, guys? Dear, dear, dear. Anyway, okay. Let's have a look at some of these Bible verses because I want to start everyone off on a positive note. So the Bible and the Scripture and what Jesus says and what the Word of God says is always very, very positive. My goodness. Okay. Lamentations 3, 22 to 23. Through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And I've already done all this, so I feel like I'm going over old ground. I've already said this, goodness knows how many times this morning. I couldn't understand why people weren't really interacting with what we're saying. Anyway, God is faithful. God is faithful. I've been completely incompetent this morning, hit the wrong button and didn't start the stream. So there you go. But we're here now. Psalm 30, verse 5. His anger is but for a moment, his favor is for life. And again, I'm just repeating myself because I've already said all this. Weeping may enjoy for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And these Bible verses, I'm laughing at myself, but these Bible verses are really important because what these Bible verses tell every single person, everybody in the comments, everyone that's tuning in this morning, it tells us that it doesn't matter what happened last night. It doesn't matter what happened 20 minutes ago when I didn't hit the start stream button, when I thought I was talking to people and wasn't really talking to people. Well, I wasn't, Dave Lilly. I wasn't actually late, mate. I was bang on time. I just didn't hit the live button. I didn't hit the go live button, which is yeah. Anyway. Thanks for that, Sheila. I really appreciate it. Look at how patient this community is. They literally were. I saw all the chats coming down. I thought those chats don't seem to be very interactive. But God's good and God's faithful. And these verses, I think, are really encouraging verses. Now I've got over the shock of talking to myself for 20 minutes. These verses are verses that everybody should start the day with, knowing that doesn't matter what happened yesterday. I mean, I know a lot of people wake up in the middle of the night and they're worried and they're stressed and they're worried about what's happening in the country and they're looking around at what's happening in the country and they're going, what are we going to do? Well, these verses tell you that what you've got to do is trust in God and trust in his word and not look at what's happening all over the world. Because we looked at what's happening all over the world, we'd be terrified. We'd be terrified of nuclear war with Russia. We'd be terrified of what's happening in the Middle East. We'd be terrified of these migrants running around killing people. We'd be terrified of the jihadists. We'd be terrified of the government trying to lock us up for just speaking the truth. But we've got to just trust in God. Even when you mess up early in the morning, you talk to yourself for 20 minutes like an idiot, you've still got to trust in God, okay? Weeping may enjoy for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Isn't that great? Joy comes in the morning. Anyway, let's have a look at some words of Jesus. And these are the very words that Jesus spoke. And he spoke these words just before his crucifixion and resurrection. Peace I leave. And this is for people that are stressed and that are worried, right? These are the people that are stressed out and are worried. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. So Jesus is saying, don't be worried about any of this stuff. Don't be troubled. If you're a believer, you don't have to worry about any of the stuff that's going on in the world. All you've got to do is trust in Christ. Now, again, let me know in the comments. Everybody's definitely hearing this, okay? Because after 20 minutes of doing this, talking to myself, maybe I needed to talk to myself this morning. Maybe it was one of those mornings when you need to get a grip and you need to say, hold on, Richard, what's going on here? But then Jesus in John 16, verse 33 says this, these things I've spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation or trouble, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And what he's talking about there, he's talking about his death on the cross and his resurrection when he rose from the dead. That's how he overcome the world. That's how he won the victory. And if we trust in Christ, we can join in that victory. We don't have to be panicked. We don't have to worry. And then finally, one of my favorite verses in the Bible, a Presbyterian minister came to my house many years ago and he read this Bible verse to me. And it really, if you get a hold of this verse, it'll really, really change your life. Because a lot of us, we run around with heavy burdens, we run around with worries, we run around with stress. And Jesus is saying, you don't have to be stressed. You don't have to be worried. And honestly, some of the stuff that's happened to me in the last few years, a lot of it my own fault, but some of the stuff that's happened to people around me has been absolutely horrendous. But I know God's in control. I know I'm rubbish and God's in control, and that's what counts. And the other thing is, like we looked at last night, we have got a plan. We've got a plan of how we can actually save the country and how we can actually change things. And this is what Jesus says in Matthew's gospel. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That's a good promise. That is a really, really good promise. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. So Jesus isn't saying you come to Christ and you live your own way, which a lot of us have done. No, Jesus is saying you come to Christ and you take his yoke. In other words, you become obedient to him. And what does that mean? It means you work hard, you put your family first, you love your wife and your kids, you love your community, you do what you can to help. And again, obeying his word and obeying how he commands you to do it. And then he says, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You know, it's a heavy burden when you're not walking with God. When you backslide, or if you're not a Christian, you're carrying everything yourself. You're trying to do everything yourself. You've got nobody to help you. You're completely on your own at the end of the day. When I sat with my mother when she was dying and saw her literally looking into heaven and the wonder on her face, I saw a believer in Christ passing into eternity. And I've sat with other people that have been very close to death that haven't been believers. And I've seen the fear because they're on their own. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to the very end, that's what happens. I want to actually look at a story. I'm going to do this a bit different to what I was going to do it. There's a story I found in the Daily Mail, I think it was, and I haven't really looked into it in detail, but I'm going to just go through it briefly now and have a look at it. So let me just add this to the stage. Remove that. Okay, so the title of the story is What Really Happens When You Nearly Die. And it says, people reveal what they saw during a near-death experience. And I'll just go through it. It says it's a question that's baffled the greatest human minds throughout history. What happens when we die? Well, it doesn't baffle our minds as believers because we know what happens when we die. And it's, if you're a believer, you're going to be with Christ. You're going to heaven. If you're not a believer, well, we know where that goes as well. You're lost and you go to hell. But it's a question that's baffled the greatest human minds throughout history. What happens when we die? Now scientists have taken us one step closer to finally knowing the truth. Researchers interviewed 48 people who have had near-death experiences and asked them what they saw in the final moments. Now, obviously, the reality is that they weren't really in the final moments because they didn't actually die. But it's interesting to see what experiences they experienced, because I suppose some of them will have actually died and they've been brought back, they've been revived. But let's have a look. Their responses revealed a staggering variety of visions. Some participants described seeing heavenly beings, while one said they experienced a terrifying journey into a black hole. Now, that's an interesting description of what happens when someone dies, because the Bible says an unbeliever, if you die as an unbeliever, you go into outer darkness, where there's wailing and gnashing of teeth. So that's very, very similar to that description of outer darkness. They experienced a terrifying journey into a black hole. Meanwhile, others described grand visions featuring religious figures and profound emotional experiences. For one example, one participant told scientists, there were stone stairs on the left in front of me, and Jesus was towards the top wearing a white robe. And another described how God appeared as a great light in the distance. I'm not sure if I've told people on my channel before. When I was 40, I got pneumonia over Christmas. I couldn't get antibiotics because you couldn't get to a pharmacist. It was just that kind of dead period between Christmas, and I was wiped out. And I was lying in bed, and I don't know whether it was a near-death experience, but obviously when you have really bad pneumonia, it kind of gives you oxygen starvation and you hallucinate. And I saw, I had the experience of going towards a white light, and I saw my granny who died about 5 years before, and my granny was, like kind of. Everyone's granny's their favorite, aren't they? But she was my favorite granny. And that's what I saw. And again, I was like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to go to the light just yet. You know what I mean? But that genuinely happened to me when I was about 40 years old. So yeah, so there's talks about people seeing God, and it says some people's visions of the afterlife were far more fantastical, featuring bizarre elements that you wouldn't find anywhere in the Bible. I'm not sure about that. It says NDEs are intense and often life-changing experiences that occur during life-threatening situations such as cardiac arrest or respiratory failure. Estimates suggest that about 4 to 8% of the general public have near-death experiences. However, despite being surprisingly common, scientists have struggled to find a way of systematically struggling each of these intense and personal experiences. In a new study currently awaiting peer review, researchers tried to categorize NDEs by interviewing people about the geometry of their experience. Surprisingly, these interview sessions revealed that no two people experienced exactly the same thing as they approached death. Even people who had visions of religious figures like God, Jesus, and the angels saw wildly different things. One participant described how they became light and saw Jesus at my right, bearded, robed, there to show me the way out. Another told the interviewer, God's force entered from in front of me towards the right. I had the feeling of wanting to lift my head and could not, or felt that I shouldn't. And when my mother was passing away, it was almost like she was seeing something, heavenly, and she was, literally her body was gone because they'd stopped the medication that was keeping her alive, because she was all her organs were failing, so she shouldn't have had the strength to be able to do what she did. And she sat bolt upright and just stared, and she didn't have a look of fear or anything. She just had a look of wonder on her face, and it was an amazing thing. Common themes of near-death experiences: God or Jesus, beautiful gardens, loved ones, strange beings, organic tunnels, black holes, visions of the future, powerful lights, black holes, and vortexes. So these things are unexplainable. Nobody can explain why people have these experiences, what they see, and we know that some people have visions of heaven, some people have visions of hell. But the reality is nobody really knows why they happen or what they're about. Anyway, speaking of the Daily Mail, lead author Dr. Franz Lerner of the Beijing Institute of Mathematical Sciences. Now that's interesting, that this is a Chinese, I'm guessing a Chinese funded study, and you'd wonder whether it really has Christianity or anything theistic's best interests at heart, because obviously if it's a Beijing institute, you would imagine that it's going to be controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Speaking to Daily Mail, lead author Dr. Franz Lerner of the Beijing Institute of Mathematical Sciences and Applications explained how our cultural backgrounds provides the scaffold for the hallucination. So see, there you go. They're basically saying that that this is all to do with the way that our brains are programmed through our lives. When you look at what people have said, because there's a lot of people, I've heard a lot of these things where people weren't even Christians, or they didn't believe in the Christian God, and they had these visions, and sometimes they became Christians, wrote the visions, sometimes they didn't, but they did have these experiences. It says this might explain why one participant reported hearing men reading the Torah rather than seeing Christian iconography. So the point is that these things are happening, and the reality is nobody can really explain them. Nobody can explain what's going on, but they are definitely things that are happening. So let's have a look at some of these things. What do people see when they die? Jesus, there were stones on the left, God, gardens, loved ones, the Matrix, beings, angels, a black hole, visions of the future, out of body experiences, strange lights, an escalator. So I think that's from our point of view, I think we've got to take these things seriously, and we've got to, I mean, you know, scientists are never going to be able to explain them. We've got to take these things seriously. But the reality is this happens to so many people when they're passing. So many people basically have these experiences of near death, and what do you make of them, guys? Let me know in the comments what you make of these near death experiences. Just let me know. Maybe two people watching the same sunset don't experience that same. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. I seen my own body on bed, but I got sent back to hell. I'm still there. Yeah, I definitely need a production. Yeah. Well, Mike, if I got Mike Graham on, he'd want to be the guy doing. Well, he could do all the stuff in front of the camera, couldn't he? Yeah. Near-death experiences are proof of people who experience them, but for those who don't, faith is more than enough. Oh, I absolutely agree with that. I 100% agree with that. That faith is far more important than any near-death experience you have. Everyone wants to believe you see your loved ones coming to meet you. Well, I had that experience when I was 40 that I saw my granny. And John, mate, I don't fight to sleep. It stresses me out. I get angry and defo ain't sleeping. LOL. I just throw on 4-hour boring history talk on YouTube and eventually drift off. Yeah. I'm not sure. Does it say anything in the Bible about these kind of experiences? Well, in the book of Revelation, it has some obviously very vivid descriptions of heaven. But no, it doesn't actually say anything about these kind of experiences. And again, we obviously don't base our faith on experiences. But there's a lot goes on that's supernatural that we don't understand. I think that's for sure. Excuse me. Okay. Next story I want to look at is, did I do this one? Did I do the Liz Truss one? About, this is the problem because I've gone through it. Let me know if I'm repeating myself here, guys, because this has turned into an absolute disaster. Because I'm not sure what I said when I was talking to myself for 20 minutes. So if I'm repeating myself, let me know. Did we talk about the people who really run the country? Let me know, guys. Did we talk about the people who really run the country? According to okay, we haven't mentioned Liz Truss yet. Okay, this is a good story. I thought the last one was a good story, but this is a good story. The people who really run the country, and I'm going to look at this in detail because I think it's really important that we have an understanding of what's really going on. Because when Advance get power, or when we get a government that's actually going to genuinely make change, they need to get at these people, find out who the people are that are really calling the shots, call them to account, either bring them to heel or sack them. It's as simple as that. We can't have unaccounted, unelected governors of the Bank of England, government lawyers, climate change fanatics, police officers like Mark Rowley calling all the shots, which seems to be what's happening at the minute. So this is what Liz Truss said. She said the true masters of the universe, in other words, the true blob, or the people that run the country, are the governor of the Bank of England, Mark Rowley, Treasury officials, Home Office lawyers dedicated to immigration policy, and the Climate Change Committee. And apparently the Climate Change Committee is largely academics who are helping to dictate energy policy. Now, to me, and again, I think we'll do some videos on this and we'll look at this in real detail. To me, these people should absolutely not be running the country. It's meant to be the government that runs the country. Now, I can't stand the Labour Party and I can't stand Keir Starmer. I think it'd be a disaster if they really were running the country. But the people that are pushing the agenda behind them, they should not be involved in making these decisions. That the ministers should make the decisions, and the civil servants should implement those decisions. That's what's meant to happen. But it seems very, very obvious, and very clear that basically the people that are running the country are not the people that are sitting in Parliament. And that has to change, because it's very easy. And again, I'm glad Liz Truss is saying all this and explaining exactly what's been going on, because we just didn't know. We thought that these politicians were completely incompetent, and they were incompetent because they should have done something about it. Yes, they're a direct link to the traitor king. Just going to look at some of these. Just before my dad died, he was laughing and saying he was still breathing for his mum, who died years before and was a believer. It was probably to let us know where he was going, as he didn't understand why. That's a powerful, powerful post. And again, we've all seen these things. Did you see the plants trying to disrupt the Advance UK forum the other night? I've heard that. There's a guy that I've blocked on X. Forget his name. He's not important anyway. But I heard he was Hooded Claw. I think he goes by on X. And I heard he was slagging me off. They're really brave people, aren't they? It's like little kids talking about you behind your back on on X pages. I mean, you know, they're just pathetic. They're just pathetic, and they're trying to disrupt things. So yeah, I mean, you know, UKIP obviously are not going to get anywhere. They're not going to win power. They're not going to win an election. They know they're not going to win an election. And the fact that they're willing to attack me, I mean, you know, the people in UKIP reported me to the Information Commissioner, 100% nailed on. Surprise, surprise, nothing happened because I hadn't broken any rules. But they were willing to ruin me. Okay, that's UKIP. They were willing to ruin me because we sent an email out through the pledge talking about advance, which I have every right to do. And it was a decision made by everybody that runs the pledge. It wasn't my decision. We all decided to do it. In fact, it wasn't even my idea. Somebody asked me to do it, and we did it. And yeah, we were attacked for it by people in the leadership of UKIP. Know that for a fact. Anyway, it is what it is. I'm not going to get into bitching about UKIP because they're not important. But yeah, in terms of this story, when Advance get power, what we need to do is we need to find these people. We need to have someone like Dominic Cummings who knows the system. And again, I'm not telling anyone in advance what to do because it's not my business. I'm not in that position in advance. But it'd be great if we got someone like Dominic Cummings to go in and do a Doge type thing and sack all these top civil servants that are causing all the havoc and causing all the problems. I'm sure there's some great civil servants, but we know for sure there's a lot that don't have the country's best interests at heart. A lot of them are globalists. A lot of them are pro-European Union, and they really, really need to go. So that's that story. Of course, we haven't looked at this one either because I've looked at this already. Now, this is an interesting story as well. So it says the Dutch shift away from populism is a warning to reform. It's not just a warning to reform, it's a warning to everybody. It's a warning to the right-wing conservatives. It's a warning to restore UK. It's a warning to reform. It's a warning to advance, and it's a warning to UKIP, but they'll probably not listen. But it's a warning to everybody that we need to have a really, really massive plan, a plan that is gonna completely shake everything up. Because if we don't get Advance UK into power at the next general election, I think reform will struggle as well. Because even though reform's storming away in the polls, Geert Wilders got 37% of the vote in the last election in 2023, and he's just been knocked into second place. And he won't be in the coalition. It's almost certain he will not be in the coalition. It's going to be a leftist government. It's going to be a globalist government. It's going to do exactly the opposite of what Wilders and his party want. And we can't have that in the UK. We have to have a right-wing government. We cannot have more of this progressive nonsense. We can't have the fake conservatives. We can't have the communists in the Labour Party. We can't have the Greens. We can't have the Lib Dems. We have to win a massive majority, which means there's a lot of work to do. And it means we need to mobilize millions upon millions of people that don't normally vote and give them hope and get them voting. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. It's really weird because I've already said all this once, so I am repeating myself, but because I was saying it to myself, it's yeah. Let's have a look. They introduced sausage, Aiken and black pudding after the war. We never won. The British breakfast was simply egg. Then they introduced coronary heart disease in the form of pork to our diet. Okay. I'm not sure if that's true, but oh man, I've heard, nobody's going to stop me eating pork and bacon. I'm sorry, it's not happening. Oh man. I pray that Jesus will unite us under the banner. Pray that we will unite under the banner of Jesus. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely agree with that 100%. It's my granddaughter's 7th birthday today. So worried for her future in the world. Well, you know, happy birthday, Tina, to your granddaughter. Tell her that we're all wishing her a happy birthday. We're all singing a happy birthday. And honestly, Tina, we can beat this. We can win without a shadow of doubt. We can win this. And yeah. So yeah, getting back to that story, Geert Wilders, who I met years ago, and is a great man, because of the proportional representation system in Holland. He could never get done what he needed to get done, and now he's pretty much lost an election. He's still obviously got a lot of power, but you know, it's a real tragedy for Holland. It's a real tragedy, and there'll be trouble ahead because and what I can't understand, guys, is I genuinely can't understand. I can't understand why. I can't understand why people are voting for these parties that don't have the best interests of the country at heart. I just can't get it. I don't understand it. Doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Now, this story, I'm going to share this story now. This story, I think, is it's one glimmer of good news, right? That came out of that horrendous story that happened on Monday night. Okay, and I'm just going to share this. And this is from the Telegraph. Neighbours picked up baseball bats to defend man from Afghan suspect. Okay, now I think obviously they didn't manage to save him. They didn't manage to get the guy and stop him killing Wayne Broadhurst, murdering Wayne Broadhurst in cold blood. But the fact that neighbours actually picked up whatever they could, whatever was to hand, and got out there and tried to fight back, I think is absolutely commendable. The story says 3 or 4 people armed themselves with baseball bats and hockey sticks and came out to confront the attacker. Mr. Hassan said it was this point Mr. Broadhurst was attacked as he walked past with his dog. Miss Hassan, who's in her 40s, said the attacker was a slim young man wearing a black jacket. Miss Hassan said the 45-year-old had a wife and young daughter who arrived at the scene later. On Thursday morning, a silver Vauxhall had been left outside the property where the attack took place, having him out the curb. A pink booster seat could be seen in the back of the car with a pink rucksack. The Metropolitan Police described the mass stabbing as shocking, senseless act of violence. Graphic footage circulating on social media appeared to show Mr. Broadhurst been stabbed repeatedly as he attempted to fight off the attacker. So this is terrible. The attack has not been treated as terrorism, and detectives are working to establish a relationship between the suspect and the 3 victims, the Met said. Well, really? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what's happened there. A neighbour previously said Mr. Broadhurst was the last person you think of being attacked. He's a bin man, so you only see him early in the morning and the evenings. Raham Masood, 39, electrical engineer, who also lived in the street, said since 2020, said, I was terrified yesterday. I was thinking about talking to the estate agents, selling the house, or organising signatures for a letter to the MP. So, I mean, I think the fact that people actually did try to intervene and try to help and try to protect that man, that shows that there is some hope, that people are basically pushing back at these monsters when they launch these attacks. And I think that has to happen. Although it's very, very difficult, that has to happen. Right, I'm gonna go to the last story of the day, and you're gonna love this one. Not. This is just unbelievable. So this is our government. This is the plan that our government has for the Middle East. Tony Blair has a contribution to make to Trump's Gaza peace deal, UK's Middle East minister says. You know, these are the same people that recognised a state of Palestine. So this is what the story says. Britain's Minister for the Middle East has pushed the case for Sir Tony Blair to be part of the board running Gaza after the second phase of the peace deal is agreed. I'll be honest with you, I'm very worried, and I know a lot of people in Israel are very worried about this peace deal. And you may say, well, Israel's nothing to do with us. That may be the case, but the reality is a stable Israel is very, very important. And obviously from a biblical point of view, I believe Israel is very important as well. But the fact that they're on about getting Blair involved, if you look at what Blair did in Northern Ireland, giving terrorist letters of comfort, and even the way that prisoners are being released in Israel, it's just a mirror image of what happened in Northern Ireland. And I hope that the Israelis don't bow to all this pressure. I hope they basically manage to destroy Hamas, because look, as bad as the IRA were, and I despise the IRA, but as bad as the IRA were, Hamas are a million times worse. because Hamas are totally driven by ideology. They are not going to make peace. Sadly, a lot of the people, the vast majority of the people probably in the Gaza Strip are radicalized. So how can you make peace with those terrorists? I think the idea that Trump had of moving everybody out of the Gaza Strip was a good idea. Turn it into the Riviera of the Riviera of the Middle East. Get rid of the terrorists out of there. Get rid of the tunnels. And this is what this clown has said about Blair, addressing the ongoing situation in Gaza. He said, I think Tony Blair obviously has a huge amount of experience both in the Middle East and on disarmament issues from the IRA. I mean, incredible. Absolutely incredible. The tragedy of the peace process in Northern Ireland is defeat was snatched from the jaws of victory. The IRA were pretty much defeated. We would have not had the situation where we'd had unreconstructed terrorists sitting in government if it wasn't for Tony Blair and Jonathan Powell. Oh dear. Goes on, the former Prime Minister has been involved in discussions with the Trump White House and has been mooted as a potential candidate to help run Gaza if phase 2 of the deal can be completed. He's worked together with Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, in formulating a peace plan, which is, again, I think it's a disastrous plan, I'll be honest with you. It's one thing that Trump's done that I really don't agree with. Supporters point out that the ex-Prime Minister was instrumental in bringing an end to the troubles in Northern Ireland. No, he wasn't. It was the security services. It was the special branch. It was MI5. It was FRU. It was 14 Intelligence Company. It was the Sneaky Beakies. It was the SAS, and all the people that were turned that brought the troubles to an end. Not liar Blair. In fact, he lied to the people of Northern Ireland, and I think the way the peace process has gone in Northern Ireland is still a blot on Northern Ireland's history. It's completely immoral. Completely immoral. And the fact that soldiers are still getting dragged back and dragged into courts. Anyway, guys, that is me. Despite the fact that 20 minutes, I was, for 20 minutes, I was completely absent without leave, even though I was there talking to the screen and not realizing that nobody was interacting with me. It's a bit embarrassing, that, isn't it? That'll not happen again, believe you me. If it does, I'm retiring from the breakfast show. But guys, thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining. If we do it tomorrow, which I am going to do it tomorrow because that'll be a full week that we've done. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I will make sure that I hit that start stream button. And thanks to my wife for phoning me. And I said, look, I'm on a stream. I can't talk. She says, well, I can't get it on my phone. And then when I realized I hadn't pressed the start button, you know what? We all need someone behind us to basically help us along our way, don't we? That's for sure. Okay, see you all soon.